Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for the series premiere of Tyrant, the pilot of Tyrant. Overall, I was really looking forward to this show, guys. I was really looking forward to this show because because I saw the promos on FX, of course, and FX is my favorite network, as you guys know. Or you might not know that, but FX is my favorite network. In case you guys don't know that. I've never seen really a bad show from them. I mean, I love Justified, I love The Americans, I love American Horror Story, I love Fargo. I've heard The Bridge is their weakest show, but, I like those 4 shows. And this show I thought was going to be just as good as that. And overall, how is this show? Honestly, this show is good. Just good. It's not to the potential of the other FX shows right now. Honestly, it doesn't feel like an FX show. It feels more like a Showtime show because of how graphic it is. And I like this show, but I feel like it's not going to hook me as much as the other FX shows are going to. I feel like The Strain, which is coming on July 13th, that's going to hook me in a lot more. Because I'm looking forward to The Strain more than I am Tyrant. I was already looking forward to that more, but this show for me is just okay. Let's just get to the episode. So we first meet our main character, who is Barry Al-Fayed. He lies awake, and his wife Molly sleeps. What is with FX having the name Molly on their shows? I don't know why, but they like to have a lot of girls named Molly. But he calls Fozzie Nidell, and he leaves a message saying he's coming for his nephew's wedding and says it would be good to see him. So he goes out for a jog, and he thinks about people shouting outside a car when he was young, and his father tells Jamal to fix his button and chews him out for being sloppy and not respecting himself. His dad calls him and Bossum, aka Barry, out into the crowd, and he tells his sons to wave and not act like girls. So that was an interesting thing there. So their dad is actually the president of Mon, and they are there for a ribbon cutting, and he cuts off as a truck bursts over the bridge, and he careens towards the Dow's spraying bullets from gunmen. And the dad yells from Bossum to get down, but tackles Jamal to protect him and leaves Bossum standing there alone, and when a bomb goes off, Bossum is thrown back from the blast. So Barry stops his run, and he gets a call from his patient, but says he has someone else covering for him because he's leaving town. And the parents insist, and Barry agrees to come in for a few minutes to see her son. Emma complains that they shouldn't go for the wedding since their grandpa's photos are being burned in public. And definitely you can see he had a very rough life, and it's very interesting to see this. So Sammy says they'll have armed escorts, and Emma says that she doesn't want to go, and her dad doesn't either. And Molly says he's going. So Barry shows back up and says he had to stop at the office. He tells Sammy to clear his plate, but the boy says he has to pack. His dad stares, but lets him go. Barry's concerned about the trip and says to Molly they aren't his family, she is. He tells her to promise they'll come back. She looks confused. They show her up late for the flight, and Emma says it's a sign from Allah that they should go to Disney. And a stewardess then comes out and asks if they're ready to board, and there are no other passengers. Their granddad bought all of the other seats on the plane, and the kids are spreading out that Barry tells them to sit in the seats that he paid for. Molly says it's no big deal. He says his dad did this because he turned down a private jet, and Molly says he won't know, and Barry says fine, and then walks back and sits in the regular section in the seat he paid for while his teenagers lounge around in first class. So Molly then joins him and says she had the window seat. They buckle in and wait for departure, and they sleep on the long flight, but then Molly wakes up and asks how long she was sleeping. Barry says for a couple of hours. She's happy that they're doing this and says it's an opportunity for him to sit down and talk with his father. And Barry says she doesn't know his father and says she knows him. The stewardess then comes with a bottle of Dom Perignon Rose and says his brother Jamal insisted they have it on board. They toast to Jamal. We see Jamal then we see Jamal outside. He's having sex with a woman, and she's not happy, and her family sits outside another room as he finishes with her. Jamal's phone rings, and he marches out saying his brother is landing shortly. The woman's husband stands and goes in and finds her washing herself and crying. So Jamal hops into his sports car, blares the song Walks This Way, pulls away from the gathered crowd with a look of disdain, Barry and his family are greeted at the airport by a representative and a grand carpet at the bottom of the stairs. They watch as a red sports car tears across the tarmac, blaring music. Jamal gets out and greets his little brother with a hug. He asks why he's so pale being in Southern California. And Jamal hugs Emma and calls her Little Mermaid, hugs Molly, and Bear hugs Sammy. So he tells him he just bought a new boat they can take out after the wedding, and tells them they're all to come to the palace. And there's a motorcade led by the sports car. Molly points out that sights, and Sammy is amazed that there's no traffic, but is told that they're holding it for them. He thinks it's sweet as well as their granddad on a billboard. And we see the aftermath of the bomb when Bosom staggers to his feet in the wreckage of other people. Burned and dead while his father rants that he can't be killed. They pull up to a giant palace with a gold dome, and Sammy says, "Holy shit," and asks his dad if he grew up here. And says he can't believe he ever left, and a woman walks out to them. A woman then walks out to them, and her name is Leela, and Jamal, and that's gonna be Jamal's wife. And Jamal says he was already at the airport when she called, which is not true. So Lila tells Barry that his father's waiting, and Molly tells him to go on. Lila asks who wants to jump into the pool, and Sammy says he wouldn't mind. Jamal escorts Barry to see their dad, and they enter a large, finely decorated room, and Khaled waits there, and he says, "Bosom," and Barry goes to him and kisses her each cheek. And he also greets his mother. He says he looks well, and Khaled says it has been too long. And Barry says he's busy with work and the kids. His father says he knows he's been busy. Amira says he's been excited about the visit, and Khaled asks to speak to Jamal alone, then promises to take Barry out for a walk. And Khaled says there are rumors of terrorist attacks planned for the wedding. Jamal says he will have the troublemakers rounded up, but his dad says not to be a fool, and tells him to talk to Walid, and reminds him that there will be consequences if he can't control his people. And he tells him to take Bosom, and he asks why, and he says, "As I told you." Amir asks her son to please stay at the palace instead of a hotel, and he says he has no more concessions. Amir says he's changed, and Khaled asks his son how it feels to be home after all these years. And he says he barely recognized the city. His dad says all the leaders have been jailed or killed, and Barry says he's still there, and his dad says the people still cry for freedom, but he gives them order and prosperity, and all they want is chaos. And Barry says his family's waiting for him, and says they need to check into the hotel. His dad says he knows he didn't come all the way to hear his old man complain, and shakes his hand. He says it's good to have him home, and Molly talks to John Tucker and his friend Dana, and he tells Barry he's with the embassy and was telling Molly how much he loves it there. And Barry says they have to go to the hotel, and they go tell Sammy to get out of the pool, but he gets very lippy about it and says he just got in. And John asks Lila why they're staying off-site, and she says it's complicated. And Barry tells Molly he went for a walk with his dad and he seems older. They tell Sammy again to get out because he's lollygagging. They walk into their hotel room, and Sammy says sarcastically that this is so much better than the palace, and Emma says she doesn't want to go to the bachelorette party, and her mom says to deal with it. Sammy and his dad are going to a bachelor party, and Barry says it's just old guys in a steam room. And Emma tells her brother to be careful and says it's not America. So at the party, they insist that Emma get a henna tattoo, even though she tried to say no. They're basically forcing her to get one. So Lila asks Molly how she got Barry to come, and she says after 19 years of marriage, she wanted to meet his family. The men swap funny stories while Jamal shaves his son for the wedding. A man comes in, Walid, and Jamal tells Barry to come along. He says he has to deal with a tribal leader whose nephew, Ayab, is a terrorist and is threatening to blow up the wedding, which is really big. And Walid tells Jamal he was happy to come, and Jamal says you didn't come, my men brought you. He says Khalid has heard that Ayab is planning to bomb his son's wedding. Walid says he tried talking to him, but can't control him. Jamal knocks the man down, kicks him, then drops his towel, beats him, threatens to take his fingers one at a time, and then cuts off one. So Barry drags off of him, and he says he's giving him more reasons to bomb them. Jamal says he's been away too long, doesn't understand how to deal with assholes like this. Barry tells him to invite Walid, Ayab, and their whole family to a wedding, put one of them at every table, and says then they will find a way to make sure no one attacks. So Jamal tells Walid that it is his brother Bosom invites him and his family to the wedding as his honored guests. The man holds his bloody stub as Barry stares annoyed at the situation he's been thrust into. Later at the hotel, Barry lies awake as Molly sleeps. He hears the call to prayer late in the night and creeps out of his room. Past security down the hall, he puts his hoodie up over his head, heads out into the street, and he heads to a mosque, and he stands at the back. Someone spots him and goes to see him, and it's actually Fozzie, and he asks what the hell he's doing here. They go outside, he takes him home with him, and he tells Fozzie his daughter looks just like her mom, and he asks him why he hasn't called him back, and Barry says he reads what he writes, and Fozzie says his dad sent tanks into Mon, and tanks killed dozens of people. And he says this time for Barry, and he says the time for Barry to come back was when that was happened, and says instead he came back for a wedding that cost £10 million. And he says people in Mon are going without them, and Barry says he's just a pediatrician, but Fozzie says he's an Al-Fayed, and Fozzie says he wrote about the tanks and was thrown to prison for 3 years. And he says Barry is living the American dream while he's dreaming of this, opens his shirt to show scars from torture. There's then a grand fireworks display at the wedding, and the bride and groom walk out. John Tucker stands near Barry, who says it's over the top, but John says the fireworks are the key to celebration. He says what Khaled has done is remarkable, and the per capita income is 18% higher than anywhere else in the Arab nations, and John is a big Khaled fan. So Sammy goes to stand by Abdul, and he asks who he is, and he says his father runs security for Khaled, and that his families provide security for all his ancestors. He says he was just making sure they're not related. Walid wishes blessings on the bride and groom. Khaled introduces them to his uncle, General Tariq, and Walid introduces his nephew, Ayab, the bomber, and Khaled asks if we enjoy the fireworks, and he says of course, and then the fireworks go off. And Jamal calls Barry out to the dance floor and says he says no, but Molly encouraged him to go, and he heads out with John. Jamal tells him he was right about how to handle Walid and says because of him the wedding was safe, and hugs his brother warmly. Jamal is handed a gun, fires it into the air, buries a flashback to seeing men assassinated by his father during security crackdowns. So Jamal then sees the bride talking and laughing with someone and looks sullen. Molly sees Barry walking off and asks where he's going. He says he needs air, and she asks what's wrong. Jamal then comes into the room with his new daughter-in-law and tells her that Ahmed is a good boy. He tells her the wedding night is special and it's important to be pure, and says it would break his son's heart if the woman he married wasn't pure. Yanks her dress up, pushes himself into her, finds her, and he finds her hymen, then pushes past it. So this is really intense here. And he says, good girl, withdraws, walks out abruptly after deflowering her. So it was just like, okay, he had sex with her and then he left. So Barry tells Molly he thinks his brother is insane and says he's broken because his father broke Jamal, which is true. Jamal is insane. And she says he's been running from his father since he was 16, and says he carried a weight that has made him joyless. And she says this has affected his relationship with her and their children. And a man comes up and tells Barry that his father has collapsed, and at the hospital, the family waits for news. The doctor comes out and says Khaled has suffered a stroke, which is really sad. So Jamal insists Khaled will be fine, and tells the doctor if his father dies, he will die too. The doctor says he asked to see Bazem. Barry sits at his bedside about the day his dad let him get blown up, and the day Khaled tried to make Jamal kill his first man. His father wakes up and speaks his name. He says without him they will kill us all. Khaled says he was wrong and says it should have been him. So he comes out and tells his mother and brother that Khaled wants to talk to them. Molly asks if he is okay, and Barry says she should go check on the kids. She goes to do that, and as he asks, Barry walks down in the hall where Lila stands outside the room. Jamal comes out sniffling and turns to his brother. He tells him he's gone, starts to walk away, and Lila stops him and says he's in charge and that it's his time and he needs to be a man. He asks when the last time she was a woman to him, and he then punches her in the face. He says she knows that she hates him, and she marches off. So the news reports that President Khaled's condition is unknown, and Barry comes and tells his family that his dad is dead, and Molly hugs him and says she's sorry, which we were pretty sure his father was going to die. I was pretty sure he was, but Molly says they can't just leave. She says they need their passports, and he says he will stop at the hotel. Sammy argues and says he's not leaving until he sees Uncle Jamal, then says he's staying there. Barry slaps his son hard in the face twice and tells him to listen, and Molly asks what's the matter with him. So Jamal is arriving his sports car, calls a woman, tells her to meet him downstairs. Barry has his family at the airport. The woman grabs a syringe out of a hiding place. Barry asks for 4 seats on the next flight to LA. Jamal drinks and drives. The woman is now riding with him and is scared. Barry's family are putting on their seatbelts to the plane. And then we see probably the most surprising scene out of the whole episode. Jamal asks the woman what she's looking at, unzips his pants, tells her to look at it, pushes her face down into his lap, careens around in the road. She's giving him a blowjob, and she tried to stab him with a syringe, but he stops her and says she bites down right on his dick, and then drives his car through the guardrail, down a cliff, lies on the rocks bleeding, manages to open his eyes. Wow, that is rough. I mean, she bit his dick. He's on the rocks bleeding. Like, that was rough. So, the plane's about to take off, and Molly tells him they're okay and are headed home. She asks him to explain what happened, and he says not now. She says he hit their son, and he tells her again not now. She says she's sick of not knowing what he's thinking or how he feels. She says that they've been married 19 years and says she doesn't know who he is anymore. And then we see a flashback of why he did this. He has the same flashback to Jamal being told to kill the man, dropping the gun. Jamal runs back to the car and hides. Crying, Khaled calls for him to get out. Barry climbs out of the car, goes over to the prisoner. He picks up the gun and the man begs for mercy. Barry coldly shoots him once in the gut and once into the head, then glares at his father. He looks to be 9 or 10 years old, and Molly rambles on about how if he doesn't start talking, she doesn't know what she'll do. The engine noise increases as the plane prepares to taxi, but then abruptly shuts down. The captain makes an announcement, says there has been a delay, and they have to all sit tight. Cars speed toward the tarmac, and Barry sees a bevy of dark sedans outside the window, and the captain comes to address Barry as Mr. Al-Fayed, and he tells Molly he said they shouldn't have come. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a good premiere of Tyrant. I didn't think it was perfect, but I thought it was a good premiere. And the show does have a lot going for them, I'll say that. The show has a lot of potential, and there's a lot of things that I do like about this show. First of all, I like that they're hiding a lot of things, that he's hiding a lot of things from his family. He's not really telling them what's going on. Let's talk about the acting in the show. The acting all across the board is really strong. I mean, the main lead, Adam Rayner as Barry, very, very good. I thought he did a really good job in the show. Very, very good in the show. I thought he was very good. His wife Molly, played by Jennifer Finnegan, she does a very good job at acting very confused, and I think she did a very good job, and I really enjoyed her performance. His daughter Emma Ann Winters, very, very good. And then Sammy, also very good as well. The one that plays Jamal, Ashraf Barham, he seems like he's going to be the main villain of the show, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the show. But overall, I really enjoyed this pilot. I thought it was really strong. It does have a couple problems for me, there were some parts in this premiere that dragged a little bit for me. I will say it's the second worst FX show. I've heard the worst one is The Bridge, and this is not my favorite FX show. It's probably not going to end up being my favorite FX show, but I do enjoy the show so far, and I am looking forward to more episodes of this show. So let me know what you guys thought of the season premiere of Tyrant. What's going to happen to Jamal? As we know, he's not dead, so we'll have to see what happens. What's Barry hiding from his family? I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And, are Molly and Barry gonna get, like, some sort of a divorce? I kind of have this feeling that that's how the season's gonna end. But that's my review. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for the season premiere of, Wilfred. So, there'll be another classic mirror review, so I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.